Hi, this is Rebecca from Three Dog House, and this is my second video discussing dog and cat nutrition. This video, though, I'm going to be talking about just some basic rules on feeding dry foods to your dogs. Some things that you need to be aware of, and how to store, how to feed, and how to choose good dry foods. So the first thing I want to talk about is certain ingredients that we all should be avoiding in our dry foods. The next thing I want to talk about is using plastic containers or plastic bowls. I also want to talk about how to not overfeed and how to stop free feeding your dog. And also discussing how to find a decent dry food company to stick with and when you choose a good food to feed your dog. The last two things I'm going to throw in there are discussing variety and also limited ingredients. Those are the kind of diets you want to watch for. So, to start with, the ingredients that you want to avoid are going to be the ones we've probably all heard of before, but byproducts. Chicken byproducts, pork byproducts, any kind of byproduct like that you want to avoid. Those are undigestible body parts. Not really beneficial for your dogs. They can't use them. There's just usually just a filler. You also want to avoid anything that would be a sugar. Any chemical preservatives like BHA, BHT, even ethoxyquin. You want to avoid any kibbles that have colors to them, anything that would be green, red, or yellow. Those dyes and colors are actually really toxic for our pets' small systems. The other fillers that are really hard for dogs to digest tend to be the corn, wheat, and soy families. These grains are not the quality they used to be 50 years ago. They're not as digestible, they're not as nutrient filled, and are just not biologically appropriate for our dogs. Even our domesticated dogs, our bodies are still not designed to digest a bunch of grains like that. So watch out for those ingredients, not only in your dry foods, but to grab your treats as well and check out the ingredients panel and see if any of those byproducts, sugars, preservatives, natural flavorings, anything like that is in those foods, and you want to avoid that stuff. And grab your pack of dry food and see if you can find the ingredients label. The one thing that I have found that is in some of the dry foods that are of more poor quality, it's hard to find their ingredients list. They'll hide it on the side panel all the way up at the top where you open the bag, hoping that you'll rip that part right off the bag. This is totally my assumption, but if a company really wants you to know it's in the food, they'll put it somewhere where it's real easy to read and real easy to find. That's just my opinion. So double check your treats too. Don't forget that your food and your treats need to be really high quality stuff. The second topic is discussing using containers with plastic or that are made of plastic. Kibble, the fat on kibble will actually bond to porous plastic, and you can't wash that fat off. So that fat then goes rancid. And so whenever you dump in fresh kibble into a plastic container, that fresh kibble is now touching all that rancid fat, and you're just scooping bacteria into your dog's bowl every single day. So if you have to use a container like that, try to slip the whole bag that the food comes in into the container, or use a garbage liner every single time you buy a new bag of food. But don't let the dry food continuously touch those walls of plastic where the fat has bonded. That bacteria can be really harmful over time. So on that same vein, you definitely don't want to feed out of a bowl that's plastic or feed water out of plastic, because they still really do breed a lot of bacteria. And a lot of animals will get acne on their chin. And once you take plastic out of the equation, usually that acne will go away. So moving on to feeding our pets the dry food. A lot of us will tend to overfeed dry foods, and you'll know when you're doing that when your dog is gassy, burpy, or overweight, obviously. really important not to get your dog overweight. It's not fair to them. They're not regulating their diet. We are. So it is not fair to our pets when we allow them to get overweight. So a lot of more natural, holistic vets are starting to tell people to stop free feeding their pets. Dry food, on the scale of all the different kinds of pet foods that we buy for them, that processed dry food is actually the hardest to digest. Therefore, it is the hardest on their organs to digest. So not allowing them to just eat all day long will actually give their organs a break. So feed your dog in the morning a breakfast that is calorically appropriate for their activity level, and do the same at dinner time. Don't allow your dog to just sort of graze all day long, especially if they're the kind of dog that just eats out of boredom. This stuff applies to cats big time, but for some dogs, some are great at grazing, just lightly eating all day long, but some can't do that. So definitely try to get your dog on a scheduled diet and allow them time to digest, poop it all out, and then digest a dinner all over again. The other thing is that I'd really like to let people know is that what scientists have discovered is that dry food will take 24 hours for a dog to digest. Wet food on a normally healthy stomach will take 10 to 12 hours for a dog to digest. Now, if they're eating a fresh raw diet, it can only take maybe 6 to 8 hours for a dog to digest that. So keep that in mind when you're feeding your dog a processed dry food. Give them that time to digest their food in an appropriate way. And also, you'll know if you're overfeeding if your dogs are pooping too much. If they poop more than twice a day, or they're just pooping huge amounts, either they're not digesting their food, or you're just overfeeding them, or it's both. Okay, moving on to discussing how to find a really good pet food company. I have been studying dog and cat nutrition for over 3 years, therefore studying a lot of different companies that make pet foods. And in doing so, I've come to find that the smaller companies that make small amounts of food usually have much higher quality. I don't find recalls coming from small companies that have like one factory where they've got 15 employees and they all know exactly what they're doing. Instead of having a gigantic company that sells, billions of pounds of food every year, and the quality control just tends to go out the window because there's probably like 10 different factories all across the nation or all across the world, and that kind of quality is really hard to control. That is a basic rule that I have in trying to find a good company. Plus, those smaller companies tend to know where their meats are coming from. They know the farms really well, and they'll know their produce much better. And they can actually hand-pick quality that way. So I tend to feed more foods like that than giant companies who are probably actually using hormones and antibiotics and stuff like that, which you don't want to feed your dog. So the other thing is to do, a lot of research all on your own. Start looking up companies online or finding books. Don't look up the actual company itself. Like, say you choose, Iams, and you want to look up, how great is Iams? Don't go to an Iams website to find out how good they are, because they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Find review sites, or look up recalls, or look up maybe newspaper articles on these companies and decide for yourself, if this company seems credible or not. But do a little bit of research and see what you can find, and then make your call. The last two things I want to discuss is finding simple ingredients, a list of ingredients that are simple, and also getting variety into your dog's life as far as feeding dry foods go. A lot of companies nowadays are making simple ingredient foods, even grain-free foods, and they're using different proteins in each recipe because they want you to rotate through those diets. They're finding that dogs are much healthier if they're eating more of a variety than if they just ate lamb and rice for 12, 13, 14 years. Which common sense would tell you that sounds about right, because variety is like the spice of life, and it really is. It really keeps your organs much healthier to be processing different kinds of proteins and different grains, different fruits, different vegetables. It just makes more sense. So find a company that makes really good, simple ingredient foods and ones that you can rotate through. It'll make your life much easier. It'll make your dog's stomach feel a lot better. It'll make, picking up those poops a lot less gruesome. And you'll probably spend a lot less at the vet too. At least I'm hoping. So to add to the end of that conversation, if you want to make a transition from one dry dog food to another, watch my next video, because that's where I'm really going to get more into detail on how to do that. So check out all your ingredients lists, double check that you don't have those gnarly ingredients, and go to your closest local pet food store, a nice small one that has hopefully more quality dry foods in there, and just start doing some research. Ask the clerk, look up the companies, write stuff down, and then we'll discuss how to transition. So check my next video, and I will see you then.